let us put our hands together as I'm privileged to introduce our guest of honor, Shri Amrinder Sinha ji, Special Secretary and Development Commissioner, Ministry of MSME, Government of India.
Friends and this very distinguished audience, our Prime Minister gave us 4 resolves. The resolves were Make in India, Zero Defect, Zero Effect, Skill Mapping and Skill Development. These are but resolves. Where is the action plan to convert that in a time-bound manner to actual action? And what does it require? Make in India is important not because we need to be a manufacturing hub. It is important because otherwise my demographic dividend will turn into a demographic disaster. And therefore, I give you the example of Germany. Germany, at the time when the depression hit us, the world, in 2008, came up with some very imaginative policies. The German policies enabled Germany to rebound the fastest from the global depression. And the consequence was that in spite of such high cost wages, such high costs of compliance, their zero defect enabled that the world trusted them. They rebounded the fastest from the global depression, and their total exports is more, exports I'm talking about, than the GDP of all European countries except one. That tells you why zero defect is important. Prime Minister has added another dimension to it, zero effect. And zero effect, mind you, is not pollution control only. It is. Zero effect is also energy efficiency. And therefore, zero defect, zero effect. We come to skill mapping. Why? We all know that 3D manufacturing is coming here. How many of us are ready for it? We have to therefore skill map it on a granular level to each district. And therefore, having skill mapped it and done a mega trend analysis of what the world is going to look like after 10 years, we have to start our skill development now. Hence, skill development. I have given you a 30,000 feet vision for purely the purposes of understanding that these 4 are not slogans. They are a serious business, and we need to take them seriously. And finally, we need to anchor it in a policy. Anchoring it in this policy will enable the action plans in a future direction, in a futuristic policy which will enable us to be world beaters. And we as Indians are capable of it. I have no doubts. Friends, thank you for your patience.
Good morning, everyone. So as we begin the day, I think the first topic for the panel is really to talk about the roadmap for manufacturing. I think over the last several months, both from a government policy action as well as discussion with corporates, manufacturing is pretty much now front and center on the agenda. And today what we'd like to do is just to deepen our discussion on a few core issues which underlie the key elements around the manufacturing roadmap. So maybe to just get the session going, what I'd like to do is sort of invite Mr. Dadu to sort of talk about, as we've heard a lot of discussion from the government on policies. We just had the Make in India workshop hosted by the Commerce Ministry as well. As we start seeing the next 6 months and the next 12 months evolve, sir, where do you see some of the first set of actions to come out in terms of subsectors which will start seeing a manufacturing revival in the country?
Well, let me begin by saying that I'd look at 6 drivers of this Make in India initiative. The Prime Minister, during the inauguration of the Make in India workshop, he said we must ensure movement of men, money, materials, minerals and machinery throughout the country. Now, this is a very definitive statement which indicates his state of mind and his desire to ensure that logistics doesn't create a problem. The finance minister has said that infrastructure spending will get a big boost in all government plans. And probably you'll see this in the forthcoming budget. The Minister of State for Finance has done a lot of spade work and has said that there's going to be a surge in FDI this year. The Commerce and Industry Minister has said that after the budget, there'll be a detailed discussion with US on the priority areas or sectors in which US investment will come. And if you look at the Telecom Minister, Mr. Prasad, he has said that an electronics development fund is being created to boost manufacturing in the electronics sector. If you look at some of the world leaders, Barack Obama was here, and I believe $1 billion of funding for solar mission has already been finalized. Germany has said that for the auto sector and the solar sector, they'll be very progressively supportive. Japan has mentioned that about $12 billion will be invested in the next 2 to 3 years. And Russia has said that by 2025, $25 billion worth of mutual investment will take place. 3 more 1,000 megawatt nuclear plants will be created. And for the first time in the history of India, Alrosa, the raw diamond mining firm, has said that they will provide adequate number of raw diamonds to 12 Indian companies, which will ensure that the gems and jewelry sector, which went up to about $60 billion of exports last year, will get a big boost. If you look at the states, and that's where the signal for Make in India really becomes a reality. Rajasthan held a partnership summit recently, some of you might have attended, and they brought out a paper that they are ready for any type of investment in the state. Gujarat wants to become a world manufacturing hub, and the Surat Diamond Bourse is probably already has 15,000 diamond merchants enrolled to make that a reality. Andhra Pradesh has Walmart and PepsiCo in great union with them. Kerala, cities like Kochi and Calicut, which I recently visited, are growing very, very fast. Kochi today has the largest mall in this country and is going to have the metro very soon. Uttar Pradesh, I believe, has 5,000 crores of investment already lined up, with Samsung putting up a state-of-the-art facility in Noida, Lava in Greater Noida, Pastel in Greater Noida. So the point I'm trying to make is all these efforts put together should make in India a reality.
Just following, I think, from the conversation, you talked about sort of the growing interest of multinationals in India to sort of further their investment options in the country. Pratyush, maybe you can just talk a little bit about sort of, as you see it from a perspective from the aerospace aviation sector, how does the external world perceive this entire policy mission?
We operate increasingly in a more for less world, where customers demand more for less. So we meet the requirement by finding places in the world where we can be more efficient. And India is one of such places in the world which has a very unique proposition. And we have certainly, as Mr. Dadu pointed out, we have certainly signed on to that and have already made investments in India, accelerating that further. Now, as we do that, some of the challenges we got to work through. One of them is clearly skilling the frontline factory workers. We're partnering with NSDC to do just that. And in our first batch that we skilled has all been absorbed by our supply chain, which, by the way, happened to be significantly from MSME sectors. And we're very proud of contributing to that sector because it really kind of adds to job creation at the front lines of the requirements and needs, right? So skill development is a very important element of that. I think we need to scale that up significantly. if we were to meet the growing demand of the sunrise sectors in aerospace and aviation manufacturing, and we are very much committed to that. The second thing I would say is that the enabling regulations around that can perhaps be relooked and tweaked around the edges. So for example, defense offsets is enabling regulation around that. It was designed to catalyze defense and aerospace manufacturing in India. Some of the provisions on this can be relooked at. For example, the period of performance during which you have to discharge the offset commitment is relatively short, it's 5 to 7 years, which for aerospace is not a long time. If you crunch it down, then we'll be forced to do simpler, lower tech stuff, which is not really in India's interest or our interest. So we want to go up the value chain and food chain. This is just an example of some of the things we could do that. We certainly shared our views on how it can be tweaked around the edges to really accelerate Make in India initiative.
Mr. Valluri, I mean, one of the sectors which is in some sense the mother industry for manufacturing is capital goods. Any country which wants to develop strong depth in manufacturing has to develop a very active capital goods industry. Now you've been here in India for a long period of time. You've also got a very good perspective what's happening in other countries with respect to India, especially on this sector. Would you like to just share your views with the audience on this particular subject?
Most of the MNCs today in India who've been operating have really been in the direction of, based on products what they have, let's create markets. I think I like to draw a distinction here with what Mr. Dadu just now mentioned and what the government of India is actually talking. Is actually now we are reversing this role. Now we are talking about a market-driven product innovation, which is really not a product-based market creation, but we are talking about a market-driven product innovation. And I think that's very important. So if you broadly look at it, if you really say there are 4 or 5 areas which the government has really defined, whether it's smart cities, whether it's defense, whether it's digitization, whether it's skill development, etc. What you're beginning to see is there is a broad direction of where you want to go after which markets. Now what that forces is for organizations to now look at what I would call as innovation at the grassroots level. Now most of us, whether we like it or not, you set up these large captive back-end innovation centers with the intent of saying, we are deepening the knowledge of technology, but fundamentally the technology has been supporting what I would say is global markets. But I think once you now look at driving innovation to serve markets which are relevant to this society and this market, then what you do is you start taking innovation to a different level. Because now you need a certain price point, you need a certain value point. If we now look at it in that dimension, what it basically does, and of course, with all the facilitation of the rules and regulations, if that allows industry to actually flourish and manufacture, then what you're beginning to do is you're allowing innovation, you're allowing skill development, and therefore you need to allow manufacturing with products that are innovated in India, for India, by India. And I think that's the key which we see as industry is absolutely important and imperative.
Thank you, Mr. Valluri. Amit, just moving on to you. I mean, we heard Mr. Valluri and Pratyush sort of give a bit of the MNC perspective to the Make in India campaign and to the program itself. With Adani, it's been one of the largest groups in Gujarat. It's been continuously investing in that area for a long period of time. How do you see it from a leading domestic group perspective about this program?
I think there are 2 sides to this whole manufacturing boost that we desperately need at this moment. Innovation, as you mentioned, is very critical. Innovation at the right time, addressing the needs of the customer, is even more critical. All our ports invest heavily in technology, which has sort of kept us apart in these difficult times. Over the last 10 years, when most ports were not growing, we proudly moved 14% of the entire country's cargo last year. That's a pretty dramatic achievement. I mean, most ports take 100 years to get to where they are today. We've done it in less than 20 years. And I think that's something that manufacturing should look at. Skill development, we've got a huge skill base. We've got to have a blend of technology with skilling, addressing the needs of the people again. And we've done that effectively at our ports.
I think one of the themes, as we've heard some of the speakers talk about, and I want to really deepen the discussion, is the theme around innovation. And I wanted to go to you, Nal, and sort of talk about, do you see this as an opportunity for India, and how do we really take advantage of the fact that we've got such a strong ICT capability in India and dovetail this with the manufacturing theme?
Yeah, thanks, Sharat. I think as you think about manufacturing and increasing manufacturing in the country, you're probably adding a 10x increase in capacity of manufacturing in the country, right? So which means that 90% of capacity is going to be greenfield. Now the question is, if you're going to put so much of capacity, how are you going to be competitive with respect to other countries which are doing the same thing, like a Thailand or Indonesia or some of the developed countries, right? And that's really where using technology to leapfrog in terms of asset productivity, in terms of employee productivity comes in, right? And one of the things we have seen, and we've done it globally and thankfully with Adani in India as well, as how do you use concepts like Internet of Everything, Internet of Things, and use that to leverage and drive productivity, to drive innovation to a much higher level than what we have seen.
Thank you, Nal. I mean, one of the themes which we talked about was also around sort of skill development. So Atul, I just wanted to go over to you to sort of deepen our discussion on this topic. How do we think about skill development, which is going to be the backbone, and just some of your thoughts about how does this link up with the MSME sector, where most of the job employment is going to take place?
In skill development, what we're trying to achieve through the various programs we have of NSTC is providing short-term courses aligned to a job role. So it's very much like saying the industry forces and the market forces are going to govern what kind of skill development is going to happen, because at the end of it, the outcome has to be a job. Now, if you look at manufacturing itself, and Make in India is a very, very nice slogan to really take it forward in India. But the problem is that we are seeing is manufacturing is not aspirational in India, especially as of the moment, and we have to make it aspirational. So I think that's another big thing that we have to work on simultaneously. Let's try and break up what they really need in terms of what kind of job roles you need and how many. You may not get it to the last thousands or something, but at least a flavor. And then give a career path to our youth. This is where you start and this is how you grow up. And what are the various breakpoints of how you can improve your lives. And it's not just about being educated and being a graduate to come into this particular field. You can be whatever, but what matters is the skill. And for that, what NSTC is trying to propagate is align the skill development in line with what the country needs and what the foreign FDI is going to come in. So we should not be faced with the problem that you've got the money ready, you've got the will ready, you've got the people ready to invest, but the people to do the job are not there.
Just to sort of close the session, I'd like to come back to Mr. Dadu, and if you could just share three thoughts. I mean, we've got a policy agenda, there's a lot of momentum which is there, but sort of three thoughts from your perspective of how does this really become real and we ensure that the momentum continues.
I'll come back to the Make in India workshop where the private sector integrated with the government in actually planning that 3-slide presentation for 25 ministries. Now, that was the first unprecedented effort where the private sector and the government sat together throughout the day and created a roadmap or a vision for that particular sector. The first point, therefore, I'd like to make is, if the private sector and the government can work in a single day to create a vision map, then why can't we sit together and take that map through? Because if you take that map through, the Make in India will happen. I don't know how many of you are familiar with those 25 3-slide presentations, but I thought all that we are discussing here is already there. It just needs the right minds to get together and implement what has been envisaged together also. So therefore, the first step is to get that initiative going. The second step, as we discussed just now, is about skilling, and therefore skilling has to become a fundamental planning exercise with each major sector of the economy. We have kind of neglected this for a very long time. If the entire effort, burden and responsibility is put on the government, they'll be able to do something. but they can't capture all your sectors. Sectoral institutes for skilling will have to be developed. The sector skill councils that Mr. Bhatnagar talked about have the private sector in it, but I still don't see too much work happening there. You have to create specialized institutes. And thirdly, material upgrades. You have the top, you have material innovation in a very big way happening all over the world. But in India, we have kind of not adopted or adapted that to a very large scale. We must get the latest material technologies and material upgrades in our systems so that costs reduce, sizes reduce, and we get into nanotechnology and biotechnology and all those sectors which can help us to grow faster. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, gentlemen. Thanks a lot.
I welcome ET's efforts at bringing together a diverse set of people, policymakers from the government and policy implementers from the industry and skill development, which is support people, to bring them together to get their ideas onto a common goal. So I think the common goal, the vision map that was being talked about today, how to carry it forward, how to, from that slogan of Make in India, to make it a reality. I think these forums are very, very important, and I'm thankful that ET has done so.
Forums like these, what they enable is to get leaders which are from diverse backgrounds and whose collective voice and confluence of thoughts make the actions implementable and real. And I think that's why to have stakeholders from government, from industry, from thought leadership forums like consultings, skill developments, all of these always, when you get a diverse group like that, I think the outcome will only be positive.
This is one platform wherein it provides opportunities to various stakeholders to get to know what kind of facilities are provided by various departments, by various agencies, and which encourages them to manufacture in the country.
I think this becomes really a think tank and a thought leadership, the summit like this, because what you see is a number of industry leaders sitting here, and you also see that the government is actually participating. And when you have the government industry participating, you really kind of define and decide what the bottlenecks could be for enhancing these kinds of major initiatives which can actually bring up the living standards of a country like India.
We talked about Make in India, zero defect, skill mapping and skill development. These are the resolves before the country. And we all need to get our act together, DIPP, Commerce, Ministry of MSME, Ministry of Textile, Ministry of Food Processing. We need to get our act together and granularize it. How will we do it? So I touched upon that. And we need to anchor all these four in a policy framework. Therefore, I appeal to everybody that the draft consultation policy, as per the directions of the government, is already out on the net, and therefore kindly respond. We would like to have a consultative framework whereby whatever policies we are making, we shall be having it with your full consent and suggestions.